G'day fellow board gamers, reviewers, developers, publishers, and anybody who's just generally interested in fantasy, I guess, because that is what is at the heart of Warden Chronicles. Before I touch on the game and some aspects of what it is, I just want to apologise for a bit of poor communication on my behalf, really. Obviously, COVID has had a widespread impact, and it's impacted me to work on this game more than I would have liked, and I had to focus more on my full-time job and other bits and pieces going on in my life, unfortunately, and it has obviously impacted on how much I could work on Warden Chronicles. However, that said, things have started to look a lot clearer and been alleviated by what's going on in Australia. So as a result, I've been able to put a bit more time into it by bits and pieces clearing up. Now, meanwhile, Maya has been working really hard behind the scenes with lesser direction from me than I would have liked, and she's been soldiering on fantastically and doing a really fantastic job. And then Alicia's been just chipping away at artwork and just getting little bits and feedback to work on between then and there, and has really made some nice headway. Now, the newest bits and pieces that Alicia have done are not here, and I must also preface that other artworks are done by other artists here that are listed on Board Game Geek as well, such as the tiles, which have been beautifully illustrated by Mark, who did a wonderful job on those. And the colour here is a little bit desaturated in regards to how vibrant, how colourful they will be, so you just have to excuse that because it's been printed at home and it's already in a mass ready print file that Maya's been working on as well. So look, without further ado, I just want to run through some of the bits and pieces and then hopefully do a second video where I'll do a playthrough through one of the tutorials that I've been putting together for board game reviewers for when I get to that sort of stage of things. And hopefully you guys can give me some feedback in regards to how you're sort of feeling about it, and hopefully you get an understanding of some of the mechanics. Now, obviously, this isn't all concrete yet. There are bits and pieces that I still want to tweak and streamline to make it a more enjoyable experience, or the most enjoyable experience, I should say, for anybody who's interested in this game. So yeah, without further ado, obviously, if there are questions after, I'm happy to, in comments or on Board Game Geek, I'm happy to try to address those as soon as possible. Okay, so what we have here, first off, I'm going to start with the biggest pieces on the board, the map tiles themselves. Now, these map tiles are quite big, and I'm not 100% sure that I'll be going with this size at this stage, but obviously we're looking at miniatures to go with this. There won't be a huge amount of miniatures, just the main characters that you'll be able to play. The rest will be done as sort of tokens, if you will, or chips. Think about chip theory games and what they do, I guess, or even Dawn Shade more recently as a Kickstarter did something similar as well with their fantastic campaign by using chips as a way to count and have monsters and things like that. So that's the direction I'm looking at going with this at this point in time. So we have distinct different territories. Every tile is made up of different areas, as you can see, as defined by the black borders here going on, or the cracked borders, and you have different types of terrain. At this stage, they are fairly bare in regards to labeling. I might go ahead with a bit of graphic design on these further. There will definitely be information about all the different bits and pieces, settlements, enemies, watchtowers and things like that inside the rulebook, which is already there actually being put together. And obviously different map tiles have different features on them, and that's obviously to give it a nice unique sort of feel when you're traveling around the kingdom of Nagaru, and sort of give it distinct areas. And you have obviously distinct areas that you can go to and you can travel into and delve into. If it's a ruin, you can explore it if it's a place of interest. So you've got a few options there in regards to what you do. You also have capital cities and settlements that you can go to and trade goods at, sell goods, get new equipment, get new cards, to really build out your deck. Alright, so those are those. Then I guess the next main component of this game is the player cards. Now, every character you choose to be, so in this case I've got Crom. Apologies for a bit of the glare, hopefully that that comes out okay, and he's actually on Board Game Geek anyway. So Crom is one of the main characters you can choose to be, and he comes with his own unique asymmetric deck, if you will, and as do all the 4 starter characters that you can select from. And this card will always stay in your area. So in your area, you can keep this card either up near there or down there, whichever feels comfortable at this point in time. The board is obviously a major work in progress, and this is a very, very outdated one now. And you are able to tap this card or use this card, whichever language you want to use, in order to trigger either the top or bottom ability, and that will refresh after you finish your activations, so to speak. And then you have this deck of cards. Now, obviously, some of the art is on some of the pieces, and some of them are still bare bones. Since this recording, there has been more artwork that has been done, but I have not updated it to save a bit of the printing costs and things like that at this stage, because obviously it's still a work in progress. All the hero cards, all the Warden cards, I should say, that make up your deck have this symbol and this background at the moment. And again, this is not final artwork for the back of these cards, but when you get upgrades and you upgrade your deck, they will shuffle into your starting pile, so to speak, and they obviously have the same back. Now, these are made up of abilities and also skills and spells. Abilities and skills interchangeably, apologies. So in this, you'll notice that on your cards you have 2 actions that you can possibly choose. When you use this card, you can either do the top or the bottom, and each of these are associated with a particular cost. Okay, and that will trigger where you place your card on your board. So as you go along, it goes along your refresh cycle, refresh track, if you will. Every round it will move around, so you're showing your exhaustion to use those particular abilities. Now, you always can spend any of these cards for a basic ability to add to, so your basic actions, abilities, such as attack, such as movement, such as diplomacy or negotiation. And as a result, you can spend 1 to add to another ability. So for example, this one here says forest movement costs 1 less when playing this card, move 2. So if I wanted to move 3, I could spend another card to go with it. So my movement would be 3, and I'll be able to move through forest at 1 less. Okay, and that's sort of how that sort of works here in this sense. Now, there's other ways you can actually enhance those abilities too, such as with your deck of fate. Now, that deck of fate is a push your luck mechanic that you don't have to buy into if you don't want to. Now, one of the things I really want to take out of this game was that some people like to try and press their luck, and other people just like to strategize and know what they're sort of doing and pre-plan and things like that. So this optimizes both aspects for players. So that's your unique deck of cards, and obviously you start with 16 of these, and then 17 obviously you want to include your own personal card. Okay, so that's what you have as your starting deck. Next thing I'll move on to is obviously the tokens, and you'll notice on the back of these they will have certain amounts of swords listed there and other affiliated aspects. Now, these will correlate with locations on the map. So that means 1 token will go onto this space per player. Okay, so if you have 4 players, 4 of these tokens are going to go down. Now, these tokens generally donate sort of different enemies we're trying to fight, or maybe negotiate with, depending on the situation. So some different aspects that will come up, or some different creatures that will come up, you'll be able to negotiate or fight. Other ones will just be completely hostile and you'll have to fight them. It's really up to what goes on there for you. Now, none of the art's been done for these yet. The idea is they will be using these tokens, and you'll notice, or you may not notice, and apologies again for the size, how much hit points the creature has, or the person has, how much damage they will be doing in the type. So you'll see a little sword there, which means they're doing melee damage. You'll also notice that they can be negotiated with or bribed, if you will, to stop attacking or to remove them from the board. You'll also notice that their target here, and you probably won't be able to make that out, and obviously the iconography on that will be a lot clearer, means they're targeting the strongest player possible. Okay, that means the one with the most hit points in this case, and that's obviously in the rule book as well. You'll notice here the little treasure icon, so you will draw from the treasure deck. Basically, you get some loot there, and different creatures or different people will drop different types of things depending. Okay, and you'll collect XP, and some characters you'll have to divide the XP up. Some they'll allow you all to take, etc. Right, so that's the tokens that we have going on. There's obviously some monster ones there as well, but I won't go into every little nitty gritty. What we have here is the Fate deck, and every character will have a Fate deck here, so to speak. And again, sorry for a little bit of glare. And again, the layout and language or the words that are going to be here aren't here yet, and obviously the coloring will not do these justice because the artwork on these is fantastic. But the idea is it's a statue or one of the types of gods of fate that lives in the world of Nagaru, and as the god becomes more displeased or upset, if you will, or lack of fate, the more decayed the statue actually is. Now the border will reinforce that as well, and also the words, whether it's success, critical success, etc., will be on these cards, or a symbol to denote that aspect as well, to make it easier for players to see what's coming up when they draw this. Now basically these will be used in random situations, or when you're doing event cards, I should say. And also if you want to try to push the skill test, or if you want to try to do a more aggressive attack. So if you played an attack card, for example, let's say I just triggered my main card here, and I wanted to do pierce and 3 ranged attack, but I wanted to make that 6 ranged attack, I could tempt fate and draw one of these cards. Now if I draw one of these cards and it's successful, fantastic, happy days, I get to add a free damage. If I get critical, I get to double that. Okay, again, the numbers are still being worked out to make it exactly balanced, but at the moment it's been working pretty well in most of the playthroughs that I've gone through with myself and others as well. Okay, I'm running out of breath, surprise, surprise. So what we then want to move on to is probably the different heroes that can be recruited throughout the campaign, and these guys can go into your honor guard. Now you're limited into how many characters you can have into your honor guard, depending on your level of reputation and if it's positive or negative. So if it's honorable or dishonorable. And each of these characters that you can recruit, that you can meet, will stay in your honor guard, and they are used cards or tapped cards that will refresh over time. And as you gain these characters, they obviously add to your ability to do different skill sets, and some will have different iconography, which you may not be able to see, unfortunately, because of the coloring and how it's been printed. Will be a cheaper to get card if you are dishonored and it's a dishonored character or a devious character, etc. Now there's a couple of ways you can pay for these characters. You can either pay through spending cards and negotiating with them and spending that exact amount of negotiation, or you can also spend gold that you accumulate, or coin that you accumulate in the game as well, and it can be made up of any combination. So this character that's worth 5 for a dishonored person, it can be done through both card play and also spending a resource, or one or the other, and it's totally up to you how you manage your system. We also then have unique quests. Now, these quests will track with you over the course of different scenarios, or part of that sort of chronicle, if you will, or they can be one-offs. Now, there's 2 different types, and they are separated. In this case, I've just chucked them all together so you can have a look at them. Basically, they're given different titles. So, for example, this one's called Pride Before the Fall, and then it has a sort of little map icon, a little quest icon, so you can tell the iconography up here. Now this one tells you the personal quest, and it tells you the objective, okay, and it tells you what your reward is. Now, there's 2 ways what happens when you complete this is you get the experiences list on that, and then you get to tuck it under your player board. And then from then after, you get that. So event step, draw 2 event cards and place one either on the top or the bottom of the event deck. So it basically gives you a little bit more choice in regards to your character because they're a bit more experienced. So different cards will be tucked under. Now, you can only tuck a maximum of 3 of these cards. You can't have any more at this stage. So some will require you to track progress. Some you'll just need to complete in total. and you'll be able to tell that these are the quest cards. They have these nice little scroll artworks going on at the moment. All right. Let me just finish off the cards then while I'm at it. So loot cards are pretty straightforward at the moment. So the loot cards have these on the back, and obviously they're missing bits and pieces of iconography. You'll notice that some have this little lightning bolt in the top, which is an instant thing that can get added on to your abilities. You also have these other ones, excuse that it has no name or titles, but so you've got your food here or supplies, so you can add 2 supply. Because your character is limited to how much they can carry on them physically, sometimes it's good to keep these in reserve so then you can spend them and get that. You can also trade them in when you're at city locations or at citadel locations or at friendly settlements for coin if you need coin instead. So this purse of gold here or coin can be used for both bribery in those actions against creatures, or it can be used straight for the coin itself. And again, you've got other bits and pieces as well. You get junk in there that you can just trade and just get coin for 1 resource of your type. You've got healing potions of different types, and there are different types in there. So you've got stronger and weaker ones. And you'll know some different art coming out now that I haven't actually put up on Board Game Geek yet. BBG, what's that? So you've got your little other potions going on here. You've got sharpening tools, which will add to your pierce damage. You've got different backpacks that you can equip to your character, so therefore you can carry more resources as such. Now, the other main aspects going on here is you have your Delve deck and your Ancient Ruins or Sites deck. Now, the Delve deck is this, and again, this glare is not helping me, and I apologize. Now, the Delve deck is when you choose to take an Explorer action on a Ruins location, and you'll draw from this deck based upon how many cards are there or how deep the dungeon is, so to speak. So if the number 4 is next to it, you will know that you can only draw 4 cards in because that is the size of the dungeon, and you'll draw 1 at a time and then resolve that. Now, different things happen in the dungeons, I keep saying dungeons, I don't know why. In the ruins themselves, so you get shrines, enemy patrols, you got stashes of loot, and again, they'll give you multiple options. So for example, if you run into different things, you might have keep looking. Now, keep looking is a cave and a ruined bit of the structure. You can either move on and find another path, or Warden spend 1 supply or discard 1 card. So you always have the option of discarding a card if you don't have or accumulate the resources on you as well. But again, it's going to hurt you to do things later. So you have to balance yourself out. You can spend time gathering, and obviously you gain 2 materials. Materials are a type of resource. Now you can rest and discard 1 card, and you spend X supply to heal X amount. Okay, because in these ruins, you are going to encounter different sort of enemies, whether they're hungry thieves that you can negotiate with, or whether it's an enemy patrol. And yes, I'm aware the art is the same on those 2 because it hasn't been completed yet. So you always are going to have multiple options, such as this trap one. And I'm sorry if this is boring some people, but you can disarm, you can trigger, you could use good help, or you could move on. So you've got 4 options in these situations here, and you have to think about those things. And you don't have to do the same thing as somebody else. However, if somebody has a character that they've managed to recruit that is a keyword, say a rogue or a thief, they can, use that good help to disarm the trap. And as a result, it gets everyone across the line that's with you. So it's being smart about knowing the different things that you're going to encounter in, say, a ruin as opposed to a sacred site, which is more in a forest location or a named site, so to speak. Okay, so there's 2 decks of those. Now, the last 2 decks I'm going to talk about again, I'm just going to hold up the 2 different types of cards. We have city events and we have wilds events. Now, depending on when your character ends their turn, they're going to draw a card from one of these 2 decks. Now, that's a fat lot of cards, but at the same time, you don't get all of them to start with. You only get some of them, and then obviously as the game progresses, you add more to it. Now, depending on what happens, obviously different choices are made. And you can do different things based upon what happens here. Now, some of them are positive, some of them are negative. So, well rested, for example. Now, well rested, heal 2 and gain 3 movement the next day. Remove a negative effect status. So you've got 2 options there. So you can either remove negative effect status, which is impeding you, or you can heal 2 and gain 3 movement the next day. Now you got another one with abundant gifts. Again, gain 2 supply. Supply is a type of resource. Remove an exhaust status or heal 2. Okay, so I won't go through the whole lot of those, but there's a whole bunch there, and the same amount is here with the city event cards as well. And look, that really covers all the main cards you have besides the Chronicle deck itself. Now, I'm not married to this idea yet of using the bead cards to go through the different Chronicles or scenarios at this stage. But for the purposes of play testing, it's been working pretty well in regards to what's here. Okay, and then that leads me to the last thing. I won't open that yet because I'm going to do that through the playthrough. So I'll go through that in the playthrough. The last thing I'm going to go through is obviously the player board and sort of what's here at the moment. Okay, so again, bear with me because it is a flimsy piece of paper and it's been massively upgraded since here. So what you have around the outside is where you're placing your cards depending on what effect you use, and then your draw deck. Okay, those are your abilities that aren't sort of tired yet at this stage or don't need refreshing. Then also up the top here, you have your XP tracker going on. Then at the very, very top with the green and the reds, and sorry to anybody who's colorblind, this is your honor and dishonor tracker here. Then we have our resources, and up here you have the tile of resource. So you have your supply at the top, which is basically your food, your water, which is denoted by the symbol here at this point in time, and that's a placeholder. All of these are placeholders, I should say. Then you have your materials. Materials you want to think about as wood, stone, iron, those types of things, different materials that are going to be used either for crafting or for taking particular actions, or maybe doing a piercing action because you need metal and things like that. Last one is coin or gold that you'll be collecting, and these resources can be collected either by completing quests, they can be completed in cities or towns if you're doing trade actions and things like this, or they can actually be harvested by you as a player on different locations, and different locations will give different types of resources to you. Down here you have your activation tracker. Now, depending on the amount of players you have playing will depend on how many times you can activate per round. If you're playing solo at this stage, you get to activate 4 times, which means you'll be taking 2 actions each time you activate. Okay. The only aspect there is you have to play a card. Now, if you don't play a card, you can just simply discard one and not take an action if that's what you feel like doing. Obviously, this goes down the amount of actions, activations you have, and the actions stay the same, but the amount of activations you have changes based upon your player count as well. Over here, you have your starting amount of armor, and that can be used to sort of take away from the damage you would suffer. And obviously, this is ignored if Pierce is in play. Down this side, you have your health status. Now, what you won't notice on here because of the coloring, and I just want to make sure I get it right, is there is a darker sort of color here on the 6 for this character, which means he starts with 6 health. So I'll put 6 little markers down here. Now, if ever this 3, 2 or 1 is uncovered, and you'll notice that it's got a different color there or different shade. If I get down to 3 health, I'm going to draw 1 less card on my turn, and it's showing my level of exhaustion, and I will take an exhaustion status token as well. Now, what happens when you take damage or you lose health during combat? It will go into your blood pool, which then you can spend to do these abilities. Okay, if you heal, it first comes from your blood supply up here, which has been spent, so to speak. Okay, there's certain things that will stop blood or your life force going down here, and there's certain things that will help it go down to there. And then obviously these different abilities have different costs, and they start locked. So you have to spend experience to unlock them. You also have down here a whole bunch of unique abilities that are asymmetric to each character, which start all locked as well, that you have to unlock if you would like to spend or use them. Now, most of these abilities that are on this player card or player board are unique, and are also, when I say unique, it means they're special triggers in the sense of forcing an enemy to attack you, pulling away so you can really help in this cooperative sort of aspect of the game. Command sort of allows other players to draw an extra card, so you're really helping your fellow wardens compete in this space as you explore through the world of Nagaru. Okay, and that's about it. Unless people will have questions, obviously, and then I'll be going into a playthrough of this as well. Thank you.